Hi guys, so I met somebody the other day and they told me that they were paying their local dealer to adjust and lube their chain every few weeks. And that seems like a lot of wasted money to me. So I thought I'd make a quick video and show you guys a quick no-nonsense way of how to adjust your chain and lubricate it. Your motorcycle chain is one of the most important parts of the bike, and it's it's very important for the safety of the bike, and having a correctly adjusted and well lubricated chain is going to help a lot of parts on the bike, like your wheel bearings, and making sure that the rear wheel is aligned correctly is going to help prolong the life of your chain, your disc, your brakes, your wheel bearings. It's important. You guys need to know how to do this. Cleaning and adjusting your motorcycle chain is quite a simple, straightforward job to do. It's something you should all know how to do. It does surprise me that even after a CBT or some basic training, this is something that's not shown to people, and yet it's vitally important both to the maintenance of the bike and for your rider's safety. So we just need a few basic tools to do this job. I'll show you now. So here are the items that I'm going to use today. I like to use a soft knee pad because you only get one set of knees. Why make life difficult on yourself? You need a chain cleaning brush, a three-sided chain cleaning brush. You're going to need a 27mm socket for most bikes. Mine is the Africa Twin. That size may change, but all you need to do is put the sockets on the axle nut and you'll see what size you need. I have a 12mm spanner, a 10mm spanner, measuring tape to check the chain slack, and an old rag, and of course you'll need some chain degreaser. Any brand is fine. I'm using the Pro Clean brand, and some chain lube. An optional extra for you if you don't have a center stand on your bike is a wheel roller. This one is from True Tension. You're just going to slide that under the rear wheel, put the bike on top of the wheel roller, and that'll make your life a lot easier. It's much easier than pushing your bike around the road while you're trying to clean all around the chain. It's worth noting that I'm going to use a torque wrench here because I want to get the axle nut torqued up to the right specification. You don't want to overdo that. I'll show you that in a minute, but it's not the end of the world if you haven't got one, but in a perfect world, use a torque wrench. I'll link to all these products in the description below so you guys can easily find what it is that you need. It's definitely worth buying these things once rather than paying a dealer or a garage to do it over the lifetime of your bike. So checking your chain should be done regularly. They recommend about every 500 miles. I tend to do mine when I'm cleaning my bike. I always do it before I clean the bike because you're going to get chain degreaser and stuff over the rear wheel. So I usually do it while the bike's dirty. So first job, clean that chain, get all the old lube off, get any dirt off the chain. And to do that, we're going to use some chain degreaser. So another little tip for you is to grab some cardboard from the recycling bin and put it underneath the chain. This is going to be a bit of a messy job as all the dirt and the old grease comes off the chain. You don't really want that going all over your driveway or wherever you're doing it. So just for cleanliness, whack a bit of cardboard or something you're going to throw away underneath, save you a bit of bother. So grab your degreaser and get stuck in. You want to give it a good dousing of this stuff. It's not particularly expensive. You can use things like, there's all kinds of options you can use, petroleum and various brands of chain cleaner, or WD-40 works quite fairly well. Everybody's got an opinion on what's best. You use what you like. Whatever you find works best for you, keeps you and your bike happy, that's what you use. But don't be tight with it. Just look at the colour of that degreaser and all that dirt falling out your chain. Mine didn't look that bad, but trust me, there's a lot of old lube and dirt attached to that chain. You want to get rid of it all, reduce friction, prolong the life of your chain. Use your train brush, or if you prefer, you can just go around with an old rag and do it by hand. I have no problem with using a three-sided chain brush. Works smart, not hard. Don't need to be too aggressive with this thing. You don't want to damage O-rings, but it's designed for the job. You'll have no problems with this. So just take your time with this. Gently brush the chain, work your way all the way around the chain. So I can see here now where I've already been cleaning this chain, so I know that I've done a full loop. So I'm going to give it another dousing of the degreaser. So next up, I'm going to take my brush and move around to this inside of the chain. I've cleaned these three sides, but we've not gotten to the inside from the end of the chain, so we're going to do a loop here as well. Take your chain brush and just give it a light scrub all the way around. If you wanted to do a really thorough job, you probably want to do this once every 6 months or so perhaps. But chain lube accumulates in and around the front sprocket. So if you're up to it, you can remove your gear spline out of the way. There's a couple of small bolts here to remove this plastic cover, and then you can get in there to the front sprocket and give that a clean up as well. I'm not going to do that one today, and you probably won't do it too often either. So next up, you want to remove all of that chain degreaser. You definitely want to get this chain bone dry before you can apply any fresh lube. So take your old rag. You are going to throw this in the bin after, so use an old rag. Always when doing this, turn the wheel so that the chain is running through your hands forwards, never backwards, because you don't want to pull your fingers in towards the chain sprockets. So wrap your cloth around the chain, spin your rear wheel, and we're going to take all that degreaser and dirt off the chain. Look at that. Definitely worth having a few passes at this. You want to get as much of that dirt and degreaser off the chain as possible. Get it as dry as possible, and your new chain lube will do a better job. You'll notice that we got old dirt and degreaser and stuff all over the rear wheel. That's not going to cause any problems. Make sure you don't get it on disc brakes ideally. But we're going to clean the bike after anyway. This is why I always advise doing the chain before you're about to clean your motorcycle. Okay, so I got a lot of that degreaser off now. That's looking nice and clean and dry again. That's great. This bike's got about 5,500 miles on it now, so it's not a new chain. But if you look after your chain and you clean and lubricate it and keep it well adjusted, the chain will last you 15,000, 20,000 miles if you're lucky. So next up, we need to have a look at the chain and inspect it and decide if we need to adjust it. On this bike, the chain slack is 40 millimeters. This is the Africa Twin. You might need to look up the spec of your bike. And let me just show you. On the top of the Africa Twin, we do have some instructions here telling us to measure at the center of the chain, and we should have about 40 mil of slack. The Africa Twin is done on the side stand. Again, you'll need to check the spec on your particular bike. So firstly, just as a quick visual inspection, you're going to grab hold of your chain here in the middle of the swing arm really and see how much movement you have. Like I say, this one needs to be done on the side stand really, but just to show you, there's a fair bit of slack in this chain. And something else you're going to do to check the wear of the chain is you're going to look between these links and you're looking for any rubber O-rings that may be broken. Ideally, you want to try and catch a wearing chain early before it causes you any problems. You certainly don't want a rusty chain, you don't want any tight spots. All of these links should be moving freely. Another thing you can check with the wear of the chain is grab your chain at 2 points like this and try to move it in opposite directions. If there's excessive play there, then it probably means that these links are starting to wear and you should start thinking about replacing your chain. Okay, so let's get the bike on the side stand and we'll measure the slack of the chain. So we're going to take the chain roughly in the center between the front sprocket and the end of the axle. So that's about here on this bike. If you want to be really pedantic, you can measure the length and perhaps make a small mark there where you're going to measure this each time. So we want on this bike about 40 mil of travel. So that will be from the center of the chain to the top here, just touching. So we can push down just a little bit. Don't put excessive pressure on it, but just enough so that you're taking the slack, and then push it up to the top. And I would say that this one is only probably about 5 mil out, but it is a little slack, so we'll adjust it up and show you how we do that. So we're going to put the bike back on the center stand now, just while we undo the bolts on the axle and adjust the chain slightly. So let's take a look then at how we're going to adjust this chain. So before we do anything, let's have a look at the parts of the bike. So we have this bolt here that goes right through the center of your wheel there. And this is a 27 mil nut. We'll need to loose that one off before we're able to make any adjustments. Now, a lot of bikes have different markers or ways to see the adjustment, but you can see here there is a line here on this one, and that measures up here. These are renowned for not being particularly accurate. So, you know, there are other ways of double checking, but that will give you a good guide. You want that the same each side when you're done. It's really important that the chain adjusters here are done exactly the same each side in order to keep your chain alignment straight. So we loosen this one, and then we loosen this lock-in nut, and then that allows us to move this adjuster. You only need to move this by very small amounts to get a great effect. So let's have a look at that and do mine now. So I mentioned earlier on in the video that I'm making this because I come across somebody who was struggling to do this herself and was paying the garage to do it for them and paying each time. And one of the reasons she said that she had to do that is because she just didn't have the strength to undo this one. So you are going to struggle if you've just got a small spanner or a small socket. So leverage is your friend. So the longer the handle, the more leverage you have, the easier this is going to be. If you're still struggling with the tool that you have, a tip is to take a piece of bar or any other way that you can find really that's safe and secure to make your handle larger, and that's going to give you more leverage, and that'll make it much easier to turn that bolt. So we're not looking to remove this nut, we just want to loosen it so that we've got a bit of free play for the bolt inside to move. Next up, you need to loosen this locking nut for the adjuster. 12 mil on this one. Just give it a half a turn there, loosen that up, and you'll need to do the same on the other side. So same thing this side, 12 mil. Loosen off that locking nut. Just a couple of turns there to allow us to move the adjuster. So it may be obvious, but it's worth pointing out that as you turn these, you're going to be extending the length of this screw, pushing this adjuster back, which stretches the chain. It's really important that you only do small increments and make sure you do exactly the same on both sides. You need to keep this chain alignment correct. So I'm going to do one turn, two turn, and I can already see the chain starting to move very slightly. So that's two that side. Now I'm just going to nip this locking nut up to keep it in place. So you can put your 10 mil on here to keep your adjuster in the same place that you left it, just while you nip up this locking nut. Now we're going to do the same on the other side. So here we go, 10 mil on. We did two turns on the other side, so 1, 2, and then again we're going to nip up this locking nut here. Hold your 10mm in place and just tighten that one down with the 12. Don't need to go mad on that, just hold it in place nicely, no problem at all. So now's a good time to look at these markers here. You can count the dots along the top and the marker on the adjuster and just make sure that that's lining up the same both sides. That gives you a rough indication that your chain alignment is correct. There are various tools. You can get laser guides and you can count the threads on the bolt, or you can get a caliper and measure the distance between here and here and make sure it's the same each side. Whatever method you use, just make sure that that is the same both sides for your chain alignment. So you can count these dots along the top here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I would say that's 5.5, perhaps 6 coming to the start of the marker. Like they say, these things aren't perfectly accurate, but gives you a good idea. So I'm going to check that that looks the same the other side. So I can see on this side as well, that is also about 5.5 notches along for the edge of my marker. So that's close enough for me. So now we're going to nip that bolt back up. So just before we tighten up the axle nut, you want to make sure that these adjusters are right up against the end of the nut here. Make sure there's no space left over there. Just push the wheel forward. That should be fine, no problem at all. Torque spec on this nut is 100 Newton meters. If you don't have a torque wrench for this one, you need to know that, it needs to go fairly tight, but don't go mad on it. Don't go hammering it as tight as you can. If you haven't got a good idea of roughly what it is, then perhaps get somebody who knows just to check that for you. If you don't have a torque wrench, you don't need to buy a really expensive one, but if you're going to do your own bike maintenance, it's a really good idea to have something like that so that you can get this sort of thing right. I'll link to a couple of cheap options for you down in the description below, along with all the other bits and pieces that I've used, so check that out. While the bike's still on the centre stand, or the wheel roller if you're using it, if you don't have a centre stand, I like to keep the bike in neutral and just spin the rear wheel. Have a listen to that chain. You're listening and looking out for any tight spots or any strange noises, any loud clicks, that sort of thing. This chain should be moving around fairly smoothly. You're going to get a little bit of noise, but you'll know if something's off. So that looks and sounds good to me. So now I'm going to drop it back down onto the side stand and we will measure the chain slack again before we re-lubricate the chain, and we're ready to ride. So visually we can see the chain still does have some slack. That's moving around no problem at all. It is a little bit tighter than it was before, but you definitely still need some slack in this chain. I've seen chains where it's like a banjo string, so you don't want to be doing that. So take your tape measure, about halfway again in the length of the chain, and we are looking on this bike for about 40mm slack, and that looks about good to me. I'm happy with that. So now I'm just going to re-lube the chain, and then I clean the bike and I can go ride. So, with the bike back on the centre stand, so I can spin the rear wheel freely, or again, use your true tension wheel roller. I'm going to use some of this Pro Clean Racing chain lube, clear polymer anti-fling chain lube. I've used this one for a while, and it does me all right, no problem at all. So take your chain lube, bike in neutral, and just give it a spray. You will likely get some overspray on the wheel. Don't worry about it too much. We're going to clean the bike after. Again, this is why I always do the chain before I clean the bike. And again, don't be tight with this stuff. You want to maintain your chain well. So we've done once now, covering the back area of the chain. Now I'm going to move around to the side of the bike. I try to get all 4 sides if I can. Again, this is a matter of preference. Some people will tell you need to spray the inside, some people only spray the outside. It'll work its way around. You do what's right for you. You know, let me know in the comments what it is that you guys like to do, but I like to give mine a good coating. So another little tip to help you is grab a piece of cardboard and wedge it between the bike and your chain there, so that when you're spraying the lube on the chain, you don't coat all the stuff inside. It's just going to make your life a little bit easier and save yourself 5 minutes cleaning in a minute. So this time I'm aiming the chain lube at the outside of the chain, one revelation, and then get it on the inside of the chain there as well. You'll see the cardboard's caught some of that lube there, so that's just saved me 5 minutes of cleaning. Okay, so now I'm happy that my motorcycle chain is clean, it is adjusted, it's lubricated. So now I'm going to clean my bike, get any overspray and stuff off the bike before I go for a ride. If you haven't watched my video on how to clean a motorcycle, I'll pop a link in the description below and it'll flash up now. Click that one, have a look, and I'll show you how to clean your bike the easy way. Thanks for joining me, hope it's been helpful, and we'll see you on the road next time. So just a side note here, I just noticed that Eva's chain is also in well need of some maintenance, so I'm going to do that one as well for you. Hopefully Eva will watch this video and she can learn how to do this now herself. But look how satisfying this is with the gold DID chain. I just thought I'd show you quickly. Look at that, this doesn't have to be a job you hate doing. Done. What a difference.